And Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Genesis class live from Jerusalem with Rabbi Chaim Goldberg. Last week, he did a wonderful lesson on Let's Reveal God's World, Personal Supervision. I recommend anybody that hadn't saw it to check it out on YouTube or Facebook. But today, I think he's going to talk a little bit about some Purim uniqueness. So let's just tune right in and Shalom, Rabbi Goldberg. You're live on the Noahide World Center social media pages. We're going to turn the class over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening from Jerusalem. Hope everything is fine. By us, everything is good. A bit, as usual, a bit with a lot of things, but everything is fine. Thank God. Yes, excellent. I just came back from a very long day with my son in the army, and the ceremony is something, but I will try my best to concentrate and be with all of you for things that we are prepared. So mainly we're going to continue a bit of last week, but we're going to show one of the ways that God is working in this world. But we're going to show this through the Purim, we call this Purim Spiel, through the Purim that we have this week. This week we're going to celebrate this Purim. I will mention in the beginning, I will open. People ask me how a Noachide is supposed to celebrate Purim. So, first of all, it's not 100% obligation for Noachide to celebrate Purim. We saying all the time, we're offering that to read the Megillah, the Esther, Megillat Esther, what we call, the part of Esther. There are a few things that we can learn from there, but to read it, it's an interesting story. We will speak about this in a moment. And also to do some sort of a food meeting, I will say it like that. This is what we're doing. We're celebrating together with others, and we're also giving charity. It's very important for us on this day to give charity, to assist others. So if you're asking me, what are the main things to do in Purim? Those are the things. If you can go also to some sort of a synagogue to hear how they reading the Megillah, it's an interesting celebration. It's really a nice celebration. But again, nothing of this is obligated to do. It's more things that are mentioning. I think the main point of Purim is to realize that God is handling this world, even though we don't really see him. Again, I'm saying again this sentence, this is the main hardcore of this sentence. Purim is one of the places where we see that God is very intensive inside the history of the world. He is involved very much. In a moment, we're going to see that, but in a natural way. You can look at this in one way and to say to yourself, okay, who said that God is here? There's a king who loved his queen. His queen was from the Jewish community, so he did everything that she asked him to do. But this is not what happened there. It's much more complicated. By the way, the Megillah itself is almost 12 years, okay? We're reading it in half an hour, something like that. But it is a 12-year story, I will say, a 12-year, story that is running from one step to another step and is being built up. To see how God is handling these worlds, he's managing to, I will say, to put his hands on the wheel, when he's driving, and to lead the history. When we look on the Egyptians that got the 10 pledges, this is very clear. You see God there. Moses is coming and saying to Pharaoh, or that you're letting the people to go out, let my people go, or I'm going to give you this pledge. First of all, it's going to be the blood. Then it's going to be the frogs, whatever it is. It's very clear to see how God is part of this thing. In the Esther Megillah, there is no, in the 12 chapters of Esther, God is not being mentioned even once. He's not mentioned there, okay? If I wanted to start this session of tonight with a quiz, I will give $100 to the one that will find for me where God is being mentioned in the Megillah. Nobody will find. He's not mentioned there. So the occasions that we saw in the Megillah, in this story, is some sort of natural occasions that only when you're starting to connect the dots, you're seeing how God is also involved in the history, and I will say inspecting and is controlling the history, even though he is not doing this up front. He's doing it behind the scenes. I will call it like that. And this is the main point that we're learning from the Megillah. By the way, it is very similar to what's happening today, nowadays, that the Hebrew nation came back to their homeland, and it's a journey of 120 years already, that we're moving step by step, but it's a miracle journey. It is a miracle journey. On one side, we don't see God, he's not doing pledges, on one side. On the other side, he is involved with what's happening. So it's very similar. And I was just saying then, I'm speaking about 2,000 years ago, that just like in the Megillah, we will see in our days that God won't appear in front of the world in a miracle way, but he will guide the world in the way that everything that the prophets said will happen. So the Hebrew nation will come back to their homeland. There will be a strong country. There will be those who will try to kill them. Well, by the way, another by the way, okay, we have today, again, the Persians, okay, are trying to build up a nuclear weapon to kill up the Hebrew nation. Oh, we saw this already. So let's jump inside a bit to one of the most important points that we see in the Megillah. I want to show this. We're going to read. Dan, I hope you prepared your throat. Excellent. We're going to read a bit from the Megillah and to see one of the most, I will say, interesting ways of God to flip, I will say, to reverse things towards the Hebrew nation. Okay, people are preparing things and it's turning up against them. So let's see this. Let's share the screen and let's dive inside to the Megillah, to the Esther Megillah. Everything is bothering me here. Please, please, please. Okay. We're going to start from, you can see the screen, right? Excellent, excellent. So we're going to start from chapter 11. Let's start from chapter 11. I want to read 2 verses that we're going to see. It's almost the end of the Megillah, okay? We're going to jump, we're going to show a few things, how things got reversed, how things turned over, okay? Suddenly flipped over against all the
script,
people.
Yeah.
So it's a turning point, but it's more than a turning point. Everything changed a bit. So let's read from here, verse number 1.
Verse number 1 of Esther chapter 9. And in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, on the 13th day thereof, when the king's order and his edicts drew near to be put into execution, on the day that the Jews' enemies looked forward to ruling over them, it was reversed. The Jews should rule over their enemies.
So we have here, it was reversed, okay? Very clear. The sentence is saying, in Hebrew it says, v'na'afochu. It's changed over. They were sure that they're going to kill the Jews. Suddenly, oops, everything was changed upside down, and the Jews were ruling their enemies. Let's see for a moment also in verse number 22. Okay, please read verse number 22.
22. As the days when the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month that was reversed for them from grief to joy, and from mourning to a festive day, to make them days of feasting and joy, and sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor.
So we have here the two parts of this verse. First of all, it's clear again. It's saying that this month was reversed. Okay, they were sure that it's going to be a month that they're going to get killed. A lot of the Jews are going to get killed. A lot of the Jews are going not to have any strength or any way to stand in front of their enemies. And suddenly everything reversed. And instead of mourning in this month, they were in a lot of festive. We have, as I said before, the festive is including three things. Okay, first of all, it's a feasting and joy. So let's eat together, sending portions one to another. Let's send one to another, all sorts of kind food one with each other. The food is the best thing how to get close one with each other. Okay, and gifts to the poor. So those are the things that we're doing. I can tell you that in the Hebrew land here in Israel, it's something that is being reorganized for more than a month, that people are collecting money, and through the in all sorts of ways they are giving it to the poor people, especially in this day. In this day, people know that they can get a lot of money. But let's look to see examples of the reverse that happened. Okay, here it said loud and clear that there is a reverse. But let's see for a moment in chapter a few things. Okay, let's start with the ring. So let's jump to chapter 3. Okay, in chapter 3, yes, excellent. Verse number 10. After Haman, he wanted very much to lay his hands, okay, and not only on Mordechai, but also on all of the Jews. So he did, we call this a lottery, some sort of a lottery he decided for the day. And let's read for a moment, verse number 10, please.
10. And the king took his ring off his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the adversary of the Jews.
He gave him the ring, right? And he said to him, by the way, please read verse 11 also.
11. And the king said to Haman, the silver is given to you, and the people to do to them as it pleases you.
And what is he doing? Okay. In a moment, we're going to read it. Okay. I want to show for a moment this thing that he took his ring, the king took his ring and gave it to Haman.
Let's read ring, yeah.
Yes, let's read in verse number 8. Just a moment, let me find chapter 8, sorry. Chapter 8. Chapter 8, verse number 2.
2 says, and the king took off his ring which he had removed from Haman and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther placed Mordecai in charge of the house of Haman.
We see the reverse here, right? It started that he gave it to the Haman, and then he reversed it to Mordecai. Okay, let's continue on. Let's go to chapter 3, verse number 12. Please read it. It's a long one, but let's read it, okay?
And the king's scribes were summoned in the first month on the 13th day thereof, and it was written according to everything that Haman had ordered to the king's satraps, and to the governors who were over every province, and to the princes of every people, each province according to its script, and each people according to its tongue. It was written in the name of King Ahasuerus, and it was sealed with the king's ring.
So who is writing? Haman is writing. Haman is ordering, and he's doing this in all of the languages. And if we will go to chapter 8, okay, verse number 9, let's go for a moment. Let's see the reverse. Please read verse number 9 here, chapter 8.
9. And the king's scribes were summoned at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded, to the Jews, and to the satraps, and the governors, and the princes of the province, from Hodu to Cush, 127 princes, every province according to its script, and every nationality according to its tongue, and to the Jews according to their script and according to their tongue.
Again, you see the reverse. It started with a man, and it reversed after a few months, 3 months, 4 months, okay, 2.5, if I will be exact. It reversed that it became after Mordechai. Mordechai now is sending all those letters to all of the nations around. Let's look for a moment in chapter 3, and it's a hard sentence. Please read it. It's very hard. Just to read it, it's hard. Please.
Number 13.
Yes.
And letters shall be sent by the hand of the couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, kill, and cause to perish all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, on one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and their spoils to be taken as plunder.
So you see, it's just to read it, for a moment, to think what exactly they wanted to do. Unfortunately, we saw something very similar, 100 years ago, with a nation that decided to do something very similar to that. But to think about this for a moment, don't speak about the Jews. Just to think that you're taking one nation and you're deciding to demolish it all totally. Let's look for a moment the reverse that happened there. Now we're going to chapter 8, verse number 11. Please.
That the king had given to the Jews who are in every city the right to assemble and to protect themselves, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish the entire host of every people and province that oppress them, small children and women, and to take their spoils for plunder.
By the way, first of all, we see the reverse here, It started with this, that the Jews are going to get killed. Suddenly, the Jews are able to stand for their life. Look, what's happening here. The reverse is not, the Jews are going to kill the others. No, but you have permission to stand for your life. This is a reverse here, a very big reverse. But the Jews are not trying to kill others for the good sake. Let's demolish one of the nations. The Jews are saying, but at least we have the permission to stand for our life. Now think about this for a moment. Suddenly, the king is sending to all of the nations that the Jews have the rights, civil right to stand for their life. So everybody's trying to be very kind with the Jews, especially that the queen is also one of the Jews. So this is what's happening here. Let's see another thing that is very reversed, very upside down. Just a moment, why the mouse is not working. Let's read for a moment verse number 14.
14. The copy of the writ was for an edict to be given in every province, published to all the peoples, to be ready for that day.
And now also 15, please.
15. The couriers went forth in haste by the king's order, and the edict was given in Shushan, the capital, and the king and Haman sat down to drink, and the city of Shushan was perturbed.
Everybody was, a bit confused. What's happening here? We have permission to kill all the Jews all over the world. Something here is weird. And it's very clear the Shushan city was perturbed. Something there was not good. Let's go to chapter 8. What's happening there? In verse, please read for a moment, verse number 13.
13.
We need to read. We need just a moment. We need to read 13, 14, and 15, please.
All right, starting at verse 13. The copy of the writ was that an edict be given in every province, published before all the peoples, and that the Jews be ready for that day to avenge themselves upon their enemies. The couriers those who ride the king's steeds, the camels, went out, hastened, and pressed by the king's order, and the edict was given in Shushan, the capital. And Mordecai left the king's presence with the royal raiment, blue and white, and a huge golden crown, and a wrap of linen and purple. And the city of Shushan shouted and rejoiced.
The city of Shushan. We really can see those two. Rabbi Shmuel here. Excellent.
I'm absolutely here.
Excellent. אז עוד 10 דקות ושעה אתה בפנים, בסדר? זה אפשרי או שאתה רוצה שאני אעשה הפסקה?
מה אתה רוצה, שאני עכשיו אכנס?
לא, אני באמצע מהלך. אז תן לי עוד 10 דקות.
בסדר, תמשיך, אני אקשיב.
Okay, so we have here, I'm sorry, Rabbi Shmuel, thank you very much for coming, for joining us. So we see here the difference between the Shushan. On one side, Shushan, the city was Shushan was very humbled, they didn't know what to do. On the other side, the city of Shushan rejoiced. I want to say here again, it's something that is connected to the things that we spoke last time. There is a verse, an interesting verse. Let me put it on the screen, okay? The verse is saying like that. Oh, come on. The verse is saying like that. It's a... The verse is in Jeremiah. And it says in chapter 30, says like that. Please read verse number. First of all, read verse number 3. Okay, please.
Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 3. For behold, days are coming, says the Lord, when I will restore the captivity of my people Israel and Judah, says the Lord, and I will restore them to the land that I gave their forefathers, and they shall possess it.
So he's saying that we will return back to our homeland. Fair enough. But then we have something very interesting that the Jeremiah is saying. Please read verse number 5 for a moment, please. After we will come back to our homeland, please read verse number 5.
For so said the Lord, a sound of quaking we have heard, fear, and there is no peace.
So everybody is very afraid. We don't really know why. I don't want to go to this too much. I want to read for a moment verse number 7, please.
7. Ho, for that day is great, with none like it, and it is a time of distress for Jacob, through which he shall be saved.
It's written down in the Hebrew in a much even clearer way. There is some sort of a disaster, there is some sort of a stress that is going to be, but this stress itself is the one that is going to be reversed, and from this stress itself, we're going to be saved. We will have a saved, something that will save us from this stress itself. And I want to show this, and first of all, I want to explain that this is exactly what's happening in the Megillah. In the Megillah, what happened with Mordechai and Esther is that they had some sort of a problem, and the problem itself became, at the end, the thing that saved them out. It was reversed from the problem to become the thing that will help them. And I want to show this in one point that will explain everything, and then we'll understand what's happening in the Megillah and how God is working in this world. So I will show this through the thing that Haman, okay, this guy wanted to do to Mordechai. So we jumping to chapter number 5, and in chapter number 5, we didn't reverse it yet anything, okay? Just Haman was very annoyed for Mordechai, and at this point he is very annoyed for Mordechai that is not bowing in front of him. He's very, stubborn. He's saying to him, no, I don't care, who are you? And then he's asking his wife and his loved people what to do. Okay, you can see it here in verse number 9, please. Read 9 and 10.
All right. And Haman went out on that day happy and with a cheerful heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and he neither rose nor stirred because of him, Haman was filled with wrath against Mordecai. But Haman restrained himself, and he came home, and he sent and he brought his friends and Zeresh, his wife. So
we have here that Haman is very angry, and he is saying to them, look, I'm so big, everybody, But just like in Adam and Eve, I'm reminding it because a few reasons, just like in Adam and Eve, that God said to them, you have everything except for one tree that I don't want you to eat. And they said to themselves, okay, so we want to eat this tree. Haman is also, he have everything in his life, everything, okay, except for one Jewish person there that is annoying him. So he wants to kill him, he wants to do everything else. And he's saying, look, read verse number 13.
13. But all this is worth nothing to me every time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting in the king's gate.
So he's saying, I have everything in my life, but this Mordecai, this only one Jew is really annoying me. So what exactly are they advising him to do? Please read verse number 14.
14. And Zeresh his wife and all his friends said, let them make a gallows 50 cubits high, and in the morning say to the king that they should hang Mordecai on it, and go to the king to the banquet joyfully. The matter pleased Haman, and he made the gallows.
Just for us to understand, okay, this 50 cubits high is 25 meters high. I don't know if you ever thought about this. We're speaking about some sort of a very big 25 meters.
That's about 7 or 8 stories high. Yeah, no apartment.
Exactly.
Building.
Think about those days. This is, I want to state, I'm going to show everybody this guy that annoyed me, what I'm going to do to him. Let's jump for a moment. For whom exactly he prepared this tree to hang on?
For Mordecai.
For Mordecai. You're sure? He made it for Mordecai. Let's jump for a moment to chapter 7. Okay? And let's read for a moment verse number 10. You know what? Please, 9 and 10, please.
All right, 9. Then said Harbonah, one of the chamberlains before the king, also, behold, the gallows that Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke well for the king, standing in Haman's house, 50 cubits high, and the king said, hang him on it. And they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai, and the king's anger abated.
You see the reverse here? It's amazing, this reverse. Haman prepared for himself this tree to be hung on. He thought that he's preparing to hang Mordecai. But what exactly happened? Haman prepared against himself. This is the deep understanding of the reverse that God is doing with the Jewish people. Now, we need to realize, and it's being said very clear in the Babylon Talmud, okay? From time to time, the Hebrew people have a bit of debates inside themselves, okay? Some sort of arguments. We can see this today also. Go to the media and you will see it. Okay? There are all sorts of arguments. So God is doing something very simple. He's putting some sort of an enemy against the Hebrew nation. They are reuniting themselves together. And then God is using the bad things that people decided to do, wanted to do against the Hebrew nation, against those bad people themselves. He is reversing it. Okay? And if you remember what we spoke last week, what we said last week, that one of the most amazing things that God is using, he is punishing on the same things that the people are trying to do to others. The Egyptians tried to drown all the Hebrew people inside the Nile of the Yor. Okay? So God at the end put them, drowned them inside the sea. And the same thing is happening along history, that God is not doing things, accidentally by himself. He is using the things that people are doing and reversing it against them if it's bad. And this is also what happened with Haman. And from now on, everything is going to be reversed from this point. All the Megillah is going to be reversed, that everything that they did basically came against them. Look about this for a moment, what is happening with the Jews. We saw this before. It's not that the Jews are going to kill everybody. The Jews have the permission to stand for themselves. And at the end, we know that they managed very, very nice, and they managed to kill a lot of their enemies. Fair enough. But everything is reversed, that God is using those bad ideas, thoughts, whatever it is, and all the actions that people did against themselves, not against the Hebrew nation. Go and tell this to Khomeini, to the people in Iran today who are preparing the atomic bomb against the Hebrew nation. Go and tell them that they need to be very careful with themselves, because it's going to be against them at the end, all those things. this is how God is working along history. Now, the most important thing here, this specific thing, that he is not doing this in a way that, with all sorts of miracles. He's doing it in a very inside, natural way. Go today in the world and ask, is it miracle that the Hebrew nation came back to the homeland? No, we gave permission. I will give an example from the last history, in the last 90 years, in a moment. So everybody will say, no, it's very, natural. It's true, it's a natural way, but God is guiding all the history in this way. I will give an example. After the Holocaust, before the United Nations decided to give what we call the Chalukah, to give the Hebrew people here a land, or to give permission for the Hebrew people to build up a state of the Israeli state. Before that, straight after the Holocaust, it finished the Second World War, and there was a permission to bring to the Hebrew land, to Israel, 100,000 certificates. The one who gave it was a person from one of the, I don't remember the exact name in English, the one that was in charge in the England government and all the places, around the world. And after everybody was really happy here in Israel, and after something like 2 or 3 weeks, he withdrew back everything. He took it. And everybody here was really upset, really, was sad. People didn't know what to do. You have a lot of Holocaust survivors there, and they have no permission to come to the Hebrew people, to the Hebrew land. It wasn't an Israel state yet, okay? But this thing that he withdrew back, these 100,000 certificates, brought the situation that it was brought to the United Nations, and they decided to build up the Hebrew state, the Israeli state. So you see that from the biggest problem, God is restoring us up to things. The same thing happened with the 6-Day War, okay? The 6-Day War was a situation where all the world was against the Hebrew nation. And there was a big embargo from the French government that didn't give us anything to defend ourselves. And the Arabs, especially the Egyptians and the Syrian, they said that they're going to destroy the Hebrew state. And people were really afraid here. I will tell you just one thing that you will realize. They prepared to bury, okay? They took stadiums and they prepared to bury 300,000 people in this war. Again, listen to the numbers. They prepared themselves to bury, here in Israel, to bury 300,000 people in this war. But what happened? Suddenly in 6 days, everything turned upside down, reversed, upside down. And the Hebrew people came back to their Bible land. And they did a Bible, I will say, behavior in the modern world that is really touching all of the world today. Okay? And everybody's trying to understand what's happening. I'm just giving those as examples that how God is working in this world, and especially nowadays, we can see those things, not only in a miracle way, very clear, but also in a hidden way, in a nature way. And this is why this, I will say, this exile that we have today is much bigger than the exile of Egypt. Not only because in the exile of Egypt, we went from one country after 400 years or 200 years, whatever it is, and now we're going out from 100 countries after 2,000 years. Those are very technical things, but it's also in the Egyptian rebellion, okay, that we did redemption, we demolished the nature. We said to the nature that it can't be part of it. Now, also the nature is part of this redemption. And this is a way that God is working. Just we need to open our eyes and to see that this is the way that He's working. So it's at the personal level on one side, and also on a very, I will say, large level of the nation on the other side. It's not the nation, it's all the nations. Now, those who are joining the Hebrew nation, God is looking after them in a much closer way and helping, assisting them to grow up. So this is more or less what I wanted to say. It's very important for me that Rabbi Shmuel, that also wanted very much last week to come and had problems, will say a few words, and then I will have a few minutes also for questions. Please, Rabbi Shmuel, please. Can you hear us? Rabbi Shmuel did his
You got to
best
stop
to
the
come.
share, Rabbi.
Yes. Rabbi Shmuel did his best to come.
You're
Even
more than
though-
welcome to join in.
Even
I
though,
will
Rabbi
try to-
Shmuel, just a moment, I'm shouting up.
No
Even
problem at
though
all.
he is now in some sort of a celebration with his family, but thank you very much, Rabbi Shmuel, please.
Yeah, my great pleasure. And I want to actually carry on from what the rabbi is partially talking about. Originally, I was going to talk last week about clothing, and it's actually written in the portion, but it also relates to the Megillah that was being discussed earlier. In actual fact, the assumption that Haman can exterminate everybody within a day. That's what he plans. If you look in the Megillah, you'll find it there in chapter 4, starting from verse 13 onwards. How did he really think that he would actually, in 127 provinces, wipe out people in one day? It's something which could be, of course, an exaggerated statement, like people that have an anti-attitude have a tendency to extreme and to exaggerate about things. But still, the numbers are very clear and well reported in the Megillah itself. In chapter 9 of the Megillah, we find, and in the Jewish tradition, tomorrow is a fast day, the 13th of Adar, that the Jewish people actually had to fight against their enemies tomorrow. And in the overall result, 75,000 casualties were found. And the day afterwards, Esther requested the king to actually hang the 10 sons of Haman. And in Shushan, the capital, where the biggest fight was going on, to have a chance to retaliate on day 2 to complete the victory. The interesting thing, and relates to what Rabbi was talking about, the gallows that you read so beautifully earlier, that if you read the story as it appears, the actual decree was set 11 months before it was meant to be enforced. The 13th of the first month, which in Jewish tradition is the month of Nisan, of Passover, is when the actual letter was sent. And 11 months exactly later, based on the lots that Haman had drawn, was the extermination date, which was scheduled for tomorrow in the Hebrew calendar, the 13th of Adar. But in actual fact, as the story unfolds, in chapter 5, Esther invites the king and Haman to a party, which is followed by a party on the day after. And this was after a 3-day fast, which came immediately after the decree was passed, which means that the whole episode actually occurred in Nisan, if you want, and the general month would have been April, where the extermination was scheduled for late February or March of the following year. So which means in practical terms, as you read beautifully, that Haman was eventually hung on the gallows that he himself had prepared. So this episode occurred 10.5 months before the war took place. And it's quite ironical, 10.5 months after Haman was already hung, the Jews are encountered in a war that goes all over the provinces of the Persian Empire with 75,000 casualties. So what's going on? The person behind the scene was there many months before, 10.5 months earlier, was already hung. So what's the hassle now? The 75,000 casualties were involved. But if you read contemporary history, the 20th century, you understand it very well. In actual fact, Haman was not intending himself to do the extermination himself. He knew he had literally thousands and thousands of collaborators who would be very happy to do it under his inspiration. And sadly, I would say that in the 40s of the 20th century, this happened in so many of the areas of the German occupation, in Lithuania and in Poland and in other parts of the Balkans, and in almost all the areas which were taken in Eastern Europe under German occupation. the local population in some areas of Hungary also in 1944. There was a tremendous enthusiasm of the locals to take advantage and kill the Jews before the Germans ever did the work. A very high percentage of the killing was done by local people who were collaborators. And Haman, much the same, took for granted that he would have enough support in the various provinces where the Jews were living. Now, if you come up with the aftermath of the story, and that Achashverosh married a Jewish queen, and because of her contact with Mordechai, eventually the decree was canceled, and Haman was hung himself, and the whole situation changed. If anybody till then had an anti-Semitic attitude, claiming that the Jews are running the world, from the way the story unfolds, he had even a stronger commitment to that type of thinking. So those who were anti before Haman was hung didn't change their attitude, may even intensify their hatred. And that's something that we always have to remember, that it's not a specific person who feels in that way. There's a whole large group of people all over who have an attitude of this nature. It doesn't make us become people who feel victims all the time. You can take it exactly in the opposite direction. That every single Jew is precious, and felt, as I mentioned, Mordechai doesn't bow to him, their feature is worthless. It seems like there's still something going on that is something that he couldn't tolerate. In some of the Greek islands, Hitler sent a whole boat for one Jew or two Jews living in an area in Greece to send them all the way to Auschwitz for 2 weeks on a train. The whole procedure to make sure that any of those islands, there won't be a single Jew remaining. What would actually happen if 5 Jews would have remained in an island in Greece so far away from Eastern Poland? But that was part of his thinking. The last train that left Bergen-Belsen in March 1945, 2 months before the VE in Europe, on May 8th, there was 1,500 people sent on a train, all of them half Jewish and half not. Now, it's all of them had intermarried, and yet he couldn't tolerate the fact that some Jewish blood was still around. The message, as I say, is not to feel in a state of the victim, but to feel that commitment towards every single one of us, and anybody who wants to be close and to be part, to understand our human role, that we all have a common role together, being created in the image of God. This is something which we can take with us. You don't have to have the priestly garment for that yourself. Every person basically identifies in his behavior what he represents. And that is something that I would like to share with you this evening. And it's something which is also inspiration. We're a month before Passover. And there, as we emerged as a nation, and you take every individual person as being precious and meaningful, it's a message there also when we sit at the table together and we gather, and Purim also gifts to the poor and other people, and we share meals together. We're trying to find a way of that friendship being close. Everybody, regardless of their particular how to exterminate men, no difference to them if you were left wing, right wing, center, less than that way. It's all part of the same thing. And what we have to take from there is the positive element of having that open attitude and friendship towards all. Thank you, Rabbi, for your time. Rabbi, if you want to continue.
Yes, Rabbi Shmuel, first of all, thank you very much for your time. I will add one more point. First of all, thank you very much. I will add one more point. It's related with the clothing, so we'll say, okay? One of the costumes that we have in Purim is that we are dressing ourselves in all sorts of costumes, okay? Each one of us, a different one. But the meaning of this is what we want to show, we'll say it like that. We want to show that the inside of us always stays the same. And the clothing is only one of the ways of the humanity, okay, to show themselves. The main question is what's happening in the inside. So this is also a bit related. I won't go inside to this point. There's another point that is related to Purim. And this is one of the main sentences that Mordechai is saying to Esther. She's saying to him, when Mordechai is coming to Esther and saying to her, you must go to the king. Who knows, if not only because of this time, this is why the king took you. And she's saying to him, no, but he didn't call me for the last 30 days. It's a bit hard. If I will go there, maybe he will kill me. And he's answering her something very important. He's saying to her, the Jews are not going to be destroyed. The question is, are you going to be part of the rescuing team or someone else will? So everyone needs to know that he have, I will say, a point of time that because of that he came to this world. And the question is, does he know to take this point of time and to do the right actions or not? So this is another thing that we can learn from Purim. There are much more things, but we emphasized in the last 2 weeks, last week and this week, about the way that God is, I will say, controlling, leading the world. It's 2 words that are together. And if you have any questions or something, we have something like 10, 15 minutes. I will be more than glad to answer whatever it is on your minds. If you want to speak about Purim, you want to speak about other things. Yes, please, everybody. You're very shy today, as usual.
I have a question.
Yes.
It said that the name of God was not mentioned in the whole story, but when Esther called for a 3-day fast, I was thinking that fast was unto God. So is that not implied that God was mentioned in the story?
No, the fast was more part. This is the main difference why the Holocaust, maybe the difference between the Holocaust and what happened there. The fast was more something as an internal thing of the Jewish people to do repentance. It wasn't related with God. It was related with the internal behavior of the Jewish people. I will show this. You know what? Let me show this for a moment, okay? We need to understand what really happened there in behind the scenes of this story. When Haman is managing, let's jump here for a moment and show this, okay? When Haman is saying to the king, okay? This is in chapter number 3. When Haman is saying to the king, I want to kill all the Hebrew people. So how exactly he is describing the Hebrew nation? There it is. Dan, please read this for a moment. There is, look how he's describing the Hebrew people.
And
Okay?
Haman
And then he's
said,
saying, if it's okay, I will give you some money and I will kill all of them. Please read this for a moment.
oh, hang on, Rabbi, my microphone got turned off with you guys. Can you hear me now?
Can. Yes.
All right. He says, and Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and separate among the peoples throughout all the provinces of your kingdom, and their laws differ from those of every people, and they do not keep the king's law. It is therefore of no use for the king to let them be.
So on one side, he's saying they're not keeping the laws of the king, but he's starting with this, that they are all scattered and separated, right? This is how he's starting. And this is where he have, I will call it, a control on the Hebrew nation. And what Esther is asking Mordechai to do, look for a moment, let's jump for a moment and to see this, okay? Let me see if it's in chapter 4 or 5, just a moment. Please read verse number 16.
16, go assemble all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast on my behalf, and neither eat nor drink for 3 days, day and night, Also, I and my maidens will fast in a like manner. Then I will go to the king, contrary to the law, and if I perish, I perish.
First of all, it's a very sad, I will say, verse, because Esther is realizing that she's going to, in any case, I will call it, on a personal level, she's going to lose. Or that the king will kill her, and if he won't kill her, she will be part of the Persian family, I will say kingdom family, and she's going to be separated from the Hebrew nation. Think about this for a moment. She's going to lose the relation and the connection with the Hebrew people. She's going to tell the king that she came from the Hebrew nation, but she's going to be his wife, totally his wife, and she herself, she's going to lose it. This is what she's saying. I perished. That's it. In any case, I'm going to lose it. Or that he's going to kill me, or that I'm going to become part of the Persian family, okay, king family. But she's starting with a very interesting state. While Haman said that we are very scattered and very spread over all over the world, she's saying, go and assemble all of the Jews and do repentance for this scattered that we were. Assemble all of us together. And those 3 days are more some sort of a repentance of the Hebrew nation to become united back. And this is where nobody can I will say it, this is where God is doing a reverse for everything to bring us back to win, okay, against all the people who are against us. Now, our sages are saying, I saw one of the questions in the chat, okay? Our sages are saying, showing that every time that on one side we have permission to go back to Israel, on the other side we are still on the way, we are not there. This timing is where we have, I will say it, we are confronting a situation where the Amalek, okay, this nation, people are trying to destroy us. So we saw this 3 times. Pharaoh is saying in Exodus, Pharaoh is saying to the Hebrew people, go to your homeland. On the way, okay, in the desert, Amalek is coming and trying to destroy the Hebrew nation. The second time that we see is here in Esther, in the Megillat Esther, okay, where already Koresh, the king before Hashverosh, is declaring that the Hebrew nation can go back to their homeland and build up Jerusalem, and they're not going yet. And at this time, before they're building up the second Temple Mount, okay, Haman is coming inside, it's trying to kill, to demolish, to do the Holocaust for all of the Hebrew people. He's not managing because Esther and Mordechai are doing there all sorts of things that they're managing to win. The third time that we have is Lord Balfour in 1918, something like that, if I remember correctly, 1817. He is declaring that the Hebrew people can go back to their homeland, and we are not going straight ahead to our homeland, all the Hebrew people. And 20 years later, we have the Holocaust where they're trying to kill us. Again, they didn't manage at the end, even though they managed to do a big Holocaust. But each time, this period that on one side, the nation is saying to us, okay, you can go back to build up your homeland. And on the other side, we are still doing it slow, too slow, and not doing it fast enough. This is a time where we might find ourselves with a fight of surviving. Now, we are too close to the Holocaust, okay? My grandparents, both of them survived from the Holocaust. My aunt is still alive, 87, 88 years old. She remembers things from the Holocaust, okay? My mother, unfortunately today, she's not well. We have no connection with her physically, okay? She's not speaking with us. She have problems. But my family came, survive from the Holocaust, but we are still too close to the Holocaust to try to understand exactly everything that happened there. So it's a bit hard for us to speak about the Holocaust, why in the Holocaust it didn't manage and here it managed. At the end of the day, this is what happened. So We need to remember that this is the history of the Hebrew nation.
Rabbi, is there something that is applicable here to B'nai Noach other than the message of the Megillah for the Hebrew people? Is there something that people in the nations of the world can use to relate to how God actually functions? Last week I found very profound that measure for measure means with which God takes that intent and flips the script onto those that intend wickedness.
I think that here, the things that we basically went one step, also another step to this understanding an issue is how to deal with the Hebrew people. Now you can have two ways, or I can have three ways, I will say like that. One is to be, to say the Hebrew nation is one side, I'm in the other side, I don't want any connection with them, everything is fine. Fair enough. Okay. The other side is to say, I'm going to be against the Hebrew nation. Just like the version of our nations today, are doing what we call the Iran. We know that Iran is trying to build up a nuclear weapon to demolish the Hebrew state. So this is another way of behavior. This way of behavior, when you understand what's happening here in the Megillah and how God is reversing things, this is where people are supposed to think twice before they're doing things against the Hebrew people. And the third way is to join the Hebrew nation. The Noachite are the people who are joining the Hebrew nation. And when you're joining the Hebrew nation, God is more I will say, putting his eyes on the people and assisting them to not only to come to the world to come, but also here to live in a better way. So those are the three ways now that we're starting to see a much broader picture, Not only in the Egyptian, where God demolished the laws of nature and decided to overrule the laws of nature, to take out the Hebrew nation. Also, when he is not overruling the laws of nature, he is functioning inside the nature of the world. Still, God is doing this reverse of, the same thing that people wanted happened to them, like we saw with the man. So the question is, on one side, what side are you taking? The side of apathy. I don't want any connection with the Hebrew nation. Fair enough. Okay. So you will live here in this world. You will pass it, 70, 80, 90 years like Magimix, You will eat food and you will take it out in the toilets. That's it. This is what you will do here in this life. One side. The other side is to say, no, I want to be against the Hebrew nation. Be aware of what will happen to you. Or the third part is, no, I want to get close to the Hebrew nation. And this is where the prophets are saying, that in nowadays, people who are joining the Hebrew nation, they don't need to become Jewish, but they can get, they can be part of the God's mission in this world, and God will assist them also in their life. And this is, I think, the next stage.
Thank you,
of what
Rabbi.
we saw
Thank you
now.
so much. Is anybody in the chat? Oh, I see Lara's got her hand up.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Queen Vashti, can we say that she was a Noahide and observing the laws of modesty?
No, we can't say this at all. And the reason is very simple. I won't go inside too much to that, but King Vashti, she was also a whore. This is you say it. I'm sorry for my language. She was also she also got punished on the way that she treated the Hebrew girls. She asked them to be naked and to worship her on Shabbat, the Jewish girls, and this is why the king asked her to come. She got punished. The king asked her to come naked, and she was really angry with this. She wanted to come naked, but she was a bit sick, and then she got punished and she got killed. It's also way by way, in the way that she behaved, she got also. So it's hard to say that she was a Noahide servant. She wasn't at all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody
Yes,
else
Italo.
in the Zoom
We can't
meeting?
hear you, Italo. Yes, please.
Wrote it down on the chat.
Oh.
At the chat. Can you check out my question? Last question. Sorry.
I answered the
Another
okay.
one.
Can you tell us more about the dress and Purim? Who was the first Jew who dressed himself, or the first, I will say, Hebrew man who dressed himself as someone else?
Jacob.
Exactly. Jacob dressed himself to become Cain. Cain, to become Esau. Okay, we have that Esau and Jacob are just like Cain and Abel. Okay, so this thing is telling us that even though Jacob is trying to be in the outside as Cain, in the inside is always Jacob. Okay, and we have a lot of stories along history that Jews behaved in a way that they are not behaving like Jews, but in the right moment,
Externally only. Yeah.
They did a repentance and they said, after all, I'm a Jew. Okay, and this is basically what we're trying to show on Purim. What happened there, I will say, in the story of the Megillah, that a lot of Jews were afraid, so they dressed themselves like non-Jewish people, because they said, another few months they're going to kill us. Now, when the king reversed everything, okay, Mordechai and the king reversed everything, and they had the permission to fight for their life, they stopped of doing this outcoming behavior. So till today, we are showing this. Outside, we might show ourselves as something else, but inside, we're still the same thing. And it's related also to the clothings that we read yesterday. And it's also related, Rabbi Shmuel wanted to speak about this last week. Maybe we'll speak about this another 2 weeks from now. But again, this thing of the clothings, it's only an outside, how we're showing ourselves, okay? I don't know if you ever ask yourself why I'm not doing, every time I'm coming with a tie, I need to be very formal. No, I'm part of all of this community, okay? So the way that we are dressing ourselves is also a question of what we want to show outside, but it's not the inside of us.
Right. And so often we see people with phony facades. They're wearing, phony masks, and people aren't being real in life. Keep that in mind. Yeah. So, Rabbi, by the sounds of it, we're not on for another 2 weeks.
No. Next week we have another 2 weeks from now. I think another 2 weeks from now, I have a wedding and I won't be able to be yes. Next week we have, another 2 weeks we won't have. Okay. And I will send also again in the email and everything else, I will send exactly what are the main message of the next week. Meanwhile,
Excellent.
all of you take a toast, and drink some sort of a l'chaim for this week. Purim is a time of a joy for everybody.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, Rabbi Ingber had a post where he had a Purim party in his house, and he was playing music for us, and they were all dressed up, and he actually literally let us in his home in a broadcast. It was joy, and for those of you that are tuning in here, we've got Rabbi Ingber coming back later this afternoon with the third part of the book of Jonah he's been doing with us, and always a joy to be together with other people and learn more of the beauty in Torah and Tanakh. Thank you, Rabbi Hirschler, for joining with us and sharing as always, and Rabbi Goldberg, thank you so much. So we're going to sign out for now, and we'll see you all next week. Shabbat Shalom. Have a great week.